Okay, I think we can get started here. My name is David Howard. I'm the Director of Marketing with BrightPattern. We're going to begin our webinar, Supporting a Global Community with Cloud Contact Center Solutions. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Barak Yinye, the co-founder of UberCloud. UberCloud is a Silicon Valley startup company and a thought leader in high-performance computing in the cloud. At UberCloud, Barak is responsible for the technology and operations of the company. Prior to founding UberCloud, Barak served as the Vice President of Operations at a software-as-a-service company and managed the multi-site data center operations. Thank you for being with us today, Barak.
Thank you, David.
Great. I'm going to turn it over to you in a minute. For those in the audience, I just want to mention, if you stay all the way through the end of the webinar, which we think will not go a full hour, should be about 30 minutes, and then we'll turn it over for about 15 minutes of questions. But for those of you who stay, we have a special offer with BrightPattern that we'll announce at the end of the formal webinar period. Barak, you should be the presenter already. Feel free to take it away.
Thank you, David. Thanks for joining, everyone. My name is Barak Yinye. I'm the co-founder of UberCloud. UberCloud is the online community where engineers and scientists discover and get hands-on experience with high-performance computing. And when we talk about high-performance computing, we are primarily looking for remote compute clusters and how people interact with them. My partner Wolfgang Gensch and I started with a very simple question. We said, we are seeing a steep adoption curve for infrastructure as a service in the general enterprise workloads, but we simply were not seeing that in high-performance computing workloads, and we were seeing high-performance computing workloads lagging behind in their journey to the cloud. We should look at, first of all, why high-performance computing is important for people. It is very commonly said that out-compute is to out-compete. And if you especially look at manufacturing space, for example, I'll use that as my reference for the rest of the talk today, although HPC is used in many other fields. If you look at simply manufacturing, you will see that to develop new products and to foster innovation, companies simply need to have the compute resources that their engineers would need. The computation that goes beyond the design of a new product, for example, can be staggering. Multiple simulations would have to be done on the parts of the new product that's being designed, and in many cases, the cost of not doing this sort of computation, this sort of simulation up front during the project design phase can lead to enormous losses when the product reaches the manufacturing stage, when things are very difficult to return back to the design phase. So obviously companies have multiple options when they are looking at how to do their computation, how to do their high performance computing tasks. And nowadays we talk about three options. When they need more computing power, engineers can try to get their hands on a beefier workstation. That's the first thing they do. Think of it as a powerful PC that sits on your desktop. A second option is to seek access to some kind of an in-house compute cluster. These come in forms of a few servers working behind the company's firewalls and working in a cluster form that is being shared by multiple engineers. Or more recently, they can rent this capacity on remote computing clusters, and that's been the focus of UberCloud. So when we look at the challenges people face when they try to take their high-performance computing tasks outside of their firewalls, we see that high-performance computing is complicated, but when you start dealing with remote clusters, it gets even more complicated. You're dealing with very sophisticated hardware, again, very complex software, and many scientific parameters. And when you go outside of your firewalls. You're also dealing with problems such as cumbersome registration and administration processes of your vendor, the management of the software licenses, large data transfers between your location and the remote location, and sometimes you can't even tell what the performance characteristics of the infrastructure that you are in will be. So it's a new business and work paradigm, and it is quite difficult for especially small and medium enterprises to get into this new way of working. So we are focusing on not how large the scientific problem is, but especially how smaller companies can gain access to this sort of technology and become more competitive. So very briefly about HPC experiment, it was the result of our effort between Wolfgang and I to find out the benefits, challenges, and best practices of accessing remote HPC for demanding computing workloads. By launching the HPC experiment as a community, we brought together 4 parties, and these parties were the end users. These are the engineers which I have been referring to. The resource providers. These are the people who bring the compute cycles to the table. Many of our providers fall into either the public HPC cloud space. These are providers who literally purchased high-performance computing assets, put them into a data center which can accommodate all the needs of running such a complex hardware. And we also have a number of supercomputer centers in HPC experiment, and many times the supercomputing centers are, let's say, somewhat government funded, maybe partially privately funded. Many of them are in research labs or in universities being managed and operated out of their facilities. And currently we have providers from all around the world participating as resource providers. The software providers is the 3rd group, and they provide the licenses and support for their application codes. And 4th group, which serves as the glue to put all of it together, these are the subject matter experts, independent consultants in many cases. So we bring this group of people together, and we say we'll create the necessary circumstances for the end user to have a successful experimentation with remote computing, remote high-performance computing, that is. And we document the results, and we have a continuous loop to help the next comers in achieving their goals. So currently the HPC experiment is a worldwide community. We have 1,000 participating organizations and individuals, and these people are spread across 70 countries. Although the HPC experiment was launched in California, it very quickly gained traction across the globe, and we are continuously seeing new members joining in. The way we operate is we put individuals into teams of usually 4 to 6, and we call them teams. Each of them have a specific charter, a problem that they want to solve, and each team has an end user, a software provider, a resource provider, and in many cases 1 or more consultants to work with them. And I should again mention that everyone who's working in a team is doing it on a voluntary basis, so that the end user doesn't have to pay a large bill for this discovery effort. Now, you're starting to see the collaboration challenge that goes beyond HPC experiment. I should also mention that as a part of our efforts over the last year and a half, HPC experiment has won the HPC Wire's Reader's Choice Award for best use of high-performance computing in the cloud. in 2013. So it's a recognized effort. So when you put engineers together with high-performance computers, they start to do fairly interesting things. I just picked a few examples so that you can visualize. One of the projects which our participants worked on was an electronic device design. You are looking at the CAD drawing of the device they were working on, and they have simulated to figure out the properties of this device. This is another interesting use case. It's a stent. This is the kind of material which goes into which gets inserted into the veins if you have a heart attack, and the properties of this device, simulating it in a computer, is a lot easier than figuring out the properties of the device after it is inserted into someone's body. So you can see how critically important the high-performance computer's job in this case. One of the scientists who was involved in this project explained to me that once you insert this in, you expect that it will work the same way for millions of heartbeats until the person reaches his end of life. So this is a very critical simulation which they were working on. And I based a lot of my conversations today around engineering in mechanical fields. This is yet another example of that. This is a flash dryer, which is used to dry moist particles with hot gas. And again, understanding the behavior of how this device works before it is installed into the machinery that it needs to go into is critical for the company which is designing it. Let's look at the collaboration side of things. When you start having hundreds and now into the thousands of members who are constantly in contact with each other, you start to realize that you're looking at a collaboration challenge. So we quite literally started with emails. And this is how many companies get started. They rely on emails for all of their communication, and in no time, I mean within 2 to 3 weeks, we realized we put ourselves and our members into a great communications challenge, and we just would not be able to scale HPC experiment very far. So emails simply do not work because it just doesn't handle a conversation all that well. It's great for queuing information in somebody else's inbox, but for conversations, it's just not a great tool. So we decided we will take our projects off emails and put them into a project management tool. We put maybe months of effort in figuring out how the project management tool should work, how will teams collaborate with one another once they are formed, and this sort of a tool is very very highly recommended if you have distributed teams who have to be working on a single project. So we got a lot of mileage. The tool you are looking at here is Basecamp, if you were wondering. The one lesson we learned here is do not put people in front of a project management or collaboration tool that is completely empty, because they just do not know what to do with it. So if you look at that screenshot, we've developed templates so that all the to-dos for the project are listed. People can check off as they complete the tasks. And on the right, we have created a number of templates where people can come and fill in their key contacts information. They can enter their project definition, so on and so forth. So the lesson learned here is make sure you have a strong template which people can follow. Otherwise, they will just drop off. So the situation of getting tangled up in messages between the collaboration, the information that was going into the collaboration tool, as well as going into the email channel, were starting to hurt our productivity quite a bit. Although the project management tool took away a lot of emails and saved us from that headache, that could only be used when people were put into teams. So we were able to shove the team communications away from our mailbox, but everything that was prior to a team being formed continued to be a major challenge, and there were endless messages in trying to figure out how to get out of that. So the aha moment for Wolfgang and I was we realized that fast turnaround time, it was critical to book prospects. So in the case of HPC Experiment, a person who's wondering what they can do with an HPC Experiment is a prospect. So what you need to do with that person is, first of all, you need to let them discover what HPC Experiment is and how it works. And during that time period, they may have questions. Once they discover, they may decide to dip their toe in the water and get involved in HPC Experiment. And right at that point, they are making a decision whether to get involved or not. And fast response time was just critical. So what we decided was we tried to respond to emails as quickly as possible, and guess what happened at that point? So when you respond to someone's email a few minutes after they, let's say, filled out a form on your website, if you reply to that email, what you see immediately is a response back. So now you're basically chatting over email, which is a terrible way of doing it. There's no way for the other party to know whether you will reply to that message or not, because you're not engaged in a session per se, but you're filling up each other's email boxes by going back and forth that way. So we decided for these type of scenarios, live chat would be an excellent way to move forward. When we started looking at what sort of live chat environment we want to build, or what type of feature we want to build, we said, hey, look, we're just a very small organization. We need to start small, and we need to scale up. We just can't pay for software licenses at this point. We just can't buy servers. We just can't afford the upfront cost. So that was one of our top requirements. We also were in a situation where we were distributed. Even to date, we do not work out of the same office. We have people all around the country, and we need to be, all around the world. We need to be able to collaborate without having to be in a specific location. So supporting remote agents was necessary for us. And we're trying to churn through so many projects. Our attention span for a given project is very limited. So we chose to put forward a requirement and say the project cycle has to be very, very fast. We should be able to set it up in just days. We can come back and improve it in the future, but we just need to ship it as quickly as possible. And one requirement which may or may not be in your environments, but it's very true in ours. As HPC Experiment, we are the front for a lot of providers. I talked about resource providers, software providers, and experts in the community who all being represented within HPC Experiment. And as the people who are running the HPC Experiment, we have no way to know all of their businesses as well as they do themselves. So there lies our requirement to escalate to third-party agents, and we really needed this capability during a session without having to put the customer through a convoluted process. We should be able to escalate the call within ourselves and pull in a third party if we need to. So this is a critical item for us. And we think we will need to grow into phone support in the near future, but we're currently not there. But we were not ready to pick a solution which could not support phone in the future. And very briefly about our phone support requirements, because we are all remote, we need phone support through a soft phone, and if people are traveling, we should be able to redirect it to their cell phones. So once we gained the capability of remote chat, the first place we deployed live chat was to put it on what we refer to as our exhibit. In the exhibit, people are looking at the different type of resources which are available for them to pick to do an experiment with, and you start to see as you look at the screen that things get a little complicated when you stare at many options, 5, 10, 20, depending on what category of resources you're looking at. People tend to get buried down fairly quickly. Each of those links that you see there is a one full page explanation of what that provider can give you. And you can see how easy it gets to get lost in that. So we deployed our live chat button right there to the top right, and with one click they can find either one of us and start a live chat session. Then we found marrying it into social media is a good idea. So they're having multiple gift card promotions we have done, and we simply invite people to our website, look at our new features, and just click on the live chat feature and say hi to win a $10 gift card. So this is another interesting way of deriving engagement. And this is one where Bright Pattern folks were very helpful. When we send out emails, we drive a lot of engagement with our community members. We do things like free webinars and training sessions, which are usually hosted by third parties, and we bring our community into that environment so they can enhance their learning about this new space. And sometimes people, as soon as they see the email, they have a question, and you don't want to miss that opportunity to engage with your community. So this is one great way to embed a link to live chat right there in your emails, and answer people's questions as soon as they see it. This is one way to help yourself get out of the flood of emails that result when you send out an email blast. David, so I will turn it over to you to talk very briefly about Bright Pattern, and then we can take some questions.
Sounds good. So just 3 quick slides on Bright Pattern. We are headquartered in San Bruno, California. Our team has over 100 cumulative years of experience in the contact center industry, including with companies like Aspect, Genesys, Five9, Oracle, and I'm sorry, there was another one I wanted to mention that's just escaped me at the moment. We have thousands of agents deployed worldwide through customers and channel partners in the U.S., Latin America, Japan, and Europe. Next slide, if you could please, Barak. Service Pattern is our contact center platform. That's what Barak has deployed with Uber Cloud and HP Experiment. It's a fully featured cloud-based contact center platform that, as you saw, supports live chat, integration with voice, email, highly available, massively scalable, 5,000 users and above, and we have a single deployment with 1,900 users in Japan using the platform today. Next slide, please, Barak. Customer experience is what drives us, and I think many of us already know this on the call, that good customer experience drives retention, which translates to revenue. And again, I'm going to mention the webinar with Esteban Kolsky, a recorded presentation that's available on our website. If you're interested in understanding more about cloud computing, how it scales in the enterprise. It's a great webinar to watch. And an interesting statistic that Esteban cites is that there's surveys that show that while 80% of corporations think they're doing a good job delivering customer experience, only 8% of their customers actually think they're doing a good job. So I put that link out on chat, and then as promised at the beginning of the call, if you stayed to the end, give us a call and mention this webinar and ask for the free 30-day pilot offer. Under that offer, we will let you pilot the Service Pattern platform for 30 days without any seat license fees, and let you see for yourself how it works. So that's the end of my slides. I have a couple questions to kick off the Q&A. Barak asked at the beginning if I could moderate the questions from the audience through the chat dialogue. So take a minute, think about your question, please. Get them into the chat window. And while you're thinking about that, I will start off with a couple questions for Barak. So Barak, can you just explain a bit more detail on the implementation cycle of the live chat solution?
Sure. As I stated earlier, David, one of our requirements was that the deployment cycle had to be quite fast. That's because we are very short-handed, and our attention span for any project is fairly short. So we put forward a requirement that we should be up and running within just a few days, and move on to our next project. So the implementation cycle for us was fairly painless. The important thing is we were given a sample setup, to basically start from, and for example, we had the chat form, which was already set up for us. The error handling parameters were all there. Then we had an implementation support person who, by the way, is another Dave in your company, and he walked us through the customizations we wanted to make. And the cool thing was everything was made through a browser interface. There's a interface called the Tenant Management Panel, and our administrators were able to just pick that up fairly quickly. So now we're at a place where we can fine-tune and make adjustments on our own with very little support.
Okay, and just before I get to my next question, I want to invite the audience again. Use the chat window to pose their questions. I'm monitoring that. I'll pick that up and relay the question to Barak. Barak, the next question on my list, follow the sun customer service has long been an issue for the contact center industry to support companies of all sizes that have worldwide operations. You have people all over the world. Does your contact center run 24/7?
Yes, I will tackle that in just a second, but it's important to note BrightPattern built the capability to forward the customer inquiries to our email help desk. So if there are no chat support agents available, we really don't have to stress out. However, to answer your question, yes, we have one agent in Europe, one agent in the U.S. who covers those two zones, and we're able to follow the sun in that manner. And even at small scale, you can build the capability around this, which is very cool.
Okay, and my final question here is, what was your comparison process when you were looking at other solutions?
Yes, we had a short cycle where we looked at a few other solutions. The one key driver here was the other solutions that we considered. They provided either chat support or phone support. Although chat support is all we need right off the bat today, we are very sure that we will launch phone support as well, and we simply don't want to end up with all these islands of information where the chat calls go to one place and create a database there, the phone calls go to another place and create another database there, and we have no way to easily integrate them. We just don't want it to end. We just don't want to end up there. So we picked a solution which can grow with us and take us into from live chat support into phone support in the future.
Okay, just a quick reminder for those that have stuck with us till the end here. We're offering a free 30-day pilot offer. Give us a call, or reach out to us by email, mention this webinar, ask for the pilot offer. We'll let you try the BrightPattern service pattern platform for 30 days without any license fees. And last call for questions from the audience. Please use your chat window, monitoring that for questions that come in, and I will relay that to Barak. So Barak, I guess just final thing, if you have any additional thoughts that you want to communicate to the audience that maybe came up in the back of your mind through the presentation, anything you missed?
Oh, sure. There may be people in the audience who are interested in launching HPC experiment projects. Just to reiterate, HPC Experiment is a free community platform where engineers and scientists can discover how they can get their workloads into the remote computing clusters. Over 50 of them are available within HPC Experiment, and we are taking on projects for our 5th round. We just started that in January, so we do have some room, and we can accommodate further projects. So if you're wondering how this could work, please drop us a quick message through our chat window at hpcexperiment.com.
Okay, and a final call for questions from the audience. I don't see any pending questions. I'll just pause for a second here, let people collect their thoughts. If you have any other questions about Service Pattern, BrightPattern, or UberCloud and the HP Experiment, just get into your chat window there, type a question. You should be able to do that. Okay, I don't see any hands raised in the attendee list. I don't see any questions in the chat window, so I think we'll call it a wrap here. Thank everybody in the audience for joining, and Barak, thank you for sharing your experiences with us today.
You bet, David. Thank you. Thanks for everyone joining.
Thank you, everybody.